Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut this deep plunging neckline bustier blouse with a stylish Queen Anne neckline yoke. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So now to start on my pattern, I've gone ahead to mark all my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust. After marking my shoulder to under bust, that is the shoulder to waist point, and from here I added 6 inches for my blouse length. So you can just go ahead to measure what you want, or you can add 6 to 7 inches after your waistline to get the blouse length for this dress. So after that, the next step is to go ahead to mark the shoulder divided by 2. My shoulder divided by 2 is 7 inches, and I will add half, making it 7.5. From that point, I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'll be connecting and drawing a shoulder slope at the upper part of my dress. And after I'm done drawing this out, I'll go ahead to mark my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. After marking that, I'll be drawing a straight line on that part. And that line will be serving as my chest line area or my armhole area. So the next step is to mark what I have on the shoulder, which is my shoulder plus ½ inch. And I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line. Now I'll be dividing this into 2 by folding my tape. I'll mark, come in by ½ inch, and at the chest line I'll go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll place my ruler, connect and draw out my armhole curve. The next step is to go ahead to mark your dart, and to do that I'll be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2, or your bust pan measurement divided by 2. So I'm just going to go ahead to mark this all the way from the upper part of my pattern to the top length. And after marking this, I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to draw out a straight line, connecting all the points that I made initially. Now I'll be taking my dart intake and I'll be marking 1 inch on both sides. For a plus size or someone that is busty, you're going to be using 1.5 inches at this point. So after I'm done marking from my under bust, waist and top length, I'll draw a straight line. So I'm using a straight line, a straight dart for this pattern also. And I'll also go ahead to connect the other side of this pattern. After I'm done connecting, I'm just going to go ahead to use my marker to mark this out before we go ahead to cut out or mark out the upper part of this pattern. Now I'll place my curve drew, touching my bust down to my under bust and mark. At the other side, I'm going to place and also connect. Now I'll be using my marker to blend this all in and also draw out the other side of my pattern. So after I'm done doing this, I'll mark my basic neckline of 3 inches. That 3 inches will serve as a guide. Now I'll place my tape and I will divide the remaining part of my shoulder into 2 and mark. And from that mark, I'll go out by 2 inches and reconnect it to my bust point. So I'm going to be using a shoulder dart for this. So if you're cutting out yours, you can use a shoulder dart. You can also use a princess dart. I didn't see exactly the dart on the dress, so this is me using what I feel is okay for this dress. But if you're okay with using a princess dart, you can go ahead to also do that. So I'll just go ahead and outline my dart lines. So to blend in the shoulder line, I'm going to fold in my tape, and that 2 inches I took out, I will be replacing it back to the shoulder. And after that, I'll place my curve drew and I will reconnect it back to the armhole this way. Then I'll go ahead and use my marker to outline to make it more visible for you to see. And I'll reconnect the armhole area down to the chest line. Mark this out to indicate that we have a dart at that point. So next, from my chest line, I'll come up by 2.5 inches, because if you notice, what we have at that point is a bit high. But if you don't want yours that high, you can use 2 inches or 1.5. So after I'm done marking that, I'll insert my body measurement. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Then go ahead to measure the dart intake I have on that point, replace it and mark and add my sewing allowance. At the under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. At the top length, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance back. So the next step is just to go ahead to connect your pattern, starting from the bust to the under bust down to the waistline, and you're going to be taking it to the top length, and you're going to connect it this way. So I'll go ahead and trace out the part of this pattern that we are not making use of, and we'll go ahead to draw out the rest of the pattern. And after that, I'm going to be drawing out the neckline of this pattern. I'll place my tape, come down by 5 inches or 5.5. After the basic neckline, I'll go in more with 1/2 inch, and from that 5 inch I marked at the lower part, I will connect this way. So this is what I have at this point, and I'm going to use my marker to outline it to make it more visible. Next, we're going to be working on the deep plunging neckline. So from my my under bust, I'll come down by 1 inch and go in by 1/2, and then go ahead to blend in this neckline here and then connect it to the lower part of my pattern. So while connecting this, you want to make sure that what you have on this part is not so deep. So I have about 1 inch or 1.5 at that point. So I'll just go ahead and connect this all the way to the lower part. So we are done working or cutting out this part, and I'll outline the center point, which is the illusion neckline there. So from the lower part, I'll come up by 2.5 inches, curve this and then blend in my dart, take it immediately after the dart lines, and I'll go up. From this part, I'll go up by 3 inches and I will reconnect it all the way down. So I'm done cutting out this part, and the next step is just to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So to cut out my pattern, I'll also blend in the upper part of this pattern and I will pin it before cutting out, and then cut out the rest of the dart on the dress. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit on the subscribe button. And if you have any question regarding this particular tutorial, also leave your question at the comment section.
She got my back, I'm happy that say everything I do is for my woman.
So after I'm done cutting out, this is what I have. We'll be heading over to the back pattern. So for the back pattern, I went ahead to cut out all my basic measurements, just like we did in front. The only difference is that I have a zipper in front of this pattern. Now I'll go ahead and mark my basic neckline of 3 by 1.5 inches. So I didn't get to see the back pattern, and for the back pattern, I'll just go ahead to draw a basic back pattern for the back. And after marking my basic neckline of 3.5 inches, I also went in by 1/2 inch, just like we did at the front part. So next, I'll draw my dart and I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, come down by 4 inches here, and also go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. I'll go ahead to place my curved rule, and I'm going to connect drawing a straight line. Now I'll be marking 1/2 inch on both sides of this pattern. Go ahead to take it all the way up, and also repeat this at the other side. So after marking this, I'll just go ahead and extend my dart at the lower part also, and I'll be marking it at both sides of the back pattern. And after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to come up by 2.5 from this part. That will be serving as a guide, and I'll go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. Mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake and add the sewing allowance. Go ahead to mark the hip circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. So after that, I'll just go ahead, place, connect and draw out. So after that, I cut out the excess I had on the pattern paper. To take out my zip budge, I went in by 1/2 inch, and I'll take it all the way up and also take it down this way. And this is what I have, and I'll be cutting or tracing out that part of my zipper. After that, to create that type of asymmetric hemline, I'm just going to go ahead to place my tape, and I'll mark 2.5 inches from here, connect it to the zipper, and then go ahead just to draw out the same hemline we have at the back, at the front. Mark the same 3 inches by the side and connect. So if you notice, for this pattern I did not add a bust dart, so I just wanted this pattern to be very simple and easy, especially for a beginner. And after that, I'll just go ahead to cut this out, and with this we have come to the end of today's tutorial.